one of the things I want to make sure that everyone understands if you're listening to our videos here is that every state has different rules. So when I'm talking with you, I'm generally talking with you about Washington State or Idaho. Not being licensed in other jurisdictions, I can't talk with you about what laws are in Florida or New York or other jurisdictions. So why this is important is that you might hear something and think, well, that must apply to me in my state. Likely it doesn't, or if it does, there's a little bit of a difference to it. So if you are moving to Washington or moving to Idaho, have your estate plan looked at by an attorney licensed in these states. If you are moving from Washington or Idaho to a different state, have an attorney in that new state look at your estate planning documents. Let me give you an example of why this is really important. Let's say you are a California resident and you have an estate plan that was perfectly appropriate in California. You had a revocable living trust, you had durable powers of attorney. It was set up very well by your California attorney. And then you move to Washington. And when you're here in Washington, your California plan will be honored by the state of Washington, but it might not be the best plan for you. Let's say you and your spouse move here from California. Let's say you have a $2 million estate. Your house is worth $1 million and you have $1 million in assets. And let's say one of you has Alzheimer's and you're very concerned that long-term care costs will eat away your estate once the one spouse has died, and let's say the Alzheimer's spouse is a surviving spouse. You're right to be concerned. See, your plan might have been set up in California to give asset protection against long-term care costs, but in Washington, that plan does not work. In Washington, our DSHS, Home and Community Services Department, that's what administers Medicaid, will not honor a revocable living trust as giving asset protection to the surviving spouse. So your revocable living trust was perfectly appropriate in Washington, did everything it should have done. Was perfectly appropriate in California. But when you move to Washington, it is the wrong plan for you. You need now to have a will that has an asset protection trust that protects assets for the surviving spouse and that does not interfere with Medicaid benefits, because likely in the scenario I gave you with an Alzheimer's spouse, there will need to be long-term care. And so instead of having to spend down all your assets, let's make sure you protect at least half of them. So was your plan in California wrong? No, it was right when you lived there. Is it wrong when you move to Washington? Yes, it is. How are you supposed to know that? You can't. So my advice is whenever anyone moves to a different state, make sure that you talk to a qualified estate planning and elder law attorney in that new state so that you can make sure you have the right plan.